Liara was born on a distant world under the shining rings of a pale blue star. But for her, there was no shining light, no glow, no color. Her eyes were empty. Her world was only darkness. When she was only a child, her parents begged the Interstellar Council to help. They said their daughter was blind and she needed treatment. But the council replied with cold voices, "The law is clear. Her kind must live with what nature has given." It was called the Galactic Law, a set of strict rules written thousands of years ago. No one dared to question it. No one dared to break it. So Liara grew up with no vision. Only sounds. Only touches. Only the trembling voices of her family. Other children played in the crystal gardens, chasing the glowing insects of the night. But Liara sat in silence, listening, smiling softly, while tears rolled down her cheeks. She wanted to see what they saw, the stars, the colors, the faces of her parents. But the council had already condemned her future. She was a prisoner of eternal darkness. Her father sometimes told her stories to comfort her. He said, "There is a race called humans, strange and wild. They do not obey all the laws. They do not always accept limits." Her mother would whisper, "Humans are reckless, but they are also kind. They give hope when hope is gone." Liara listened with wonder. Humans, she thought, sounded like dreamers, but they were far away, and no one from her village had ever met one. Years passed. Liara learned to move through her home using sound. She memorized every step, every stone on the path. She learned to listen to the rhythm of wings in the air, to smell the sharp perfume of the flowers she could never see. But deep inside, a fire burned. A question lived in her heart. Why did the galaxy have laws that chose who must suffer and who must live free? Why was blindness her destiny? One night when she was 15, Liara sat outside her house under the cold rings of her planet. She could not see the stars, but she felt their silence above her, and she whispered into the dark, "If only I could see, even for one day, even for one moment, I would give anything." Her people believed that the galaxy listened to such prayers, and perhaps it did, because somewhere far across the stars, a man on a human ship was already preparing for a journey that would change everything. Dr. Elias was his name. He was a scientist, a doctor of the human frontier. He had heard of the Council's cruel laws, laws that denied healing to millions. Humans did not always obey such laws. In their history, they had broken barriers again and again. They had walked on worlds others said were forbidden. They had created cures where others said none should exist. And when Elias heard about Liara's story, something in his heart refused to stay silent. Liara did not know it yet, but the stars she could not see were already moving. Fate was already pulling her life into the hands of a stranger from Earth, and soon her darkness would be tested by a forbidden light. Her blindness had been her curse, her sentence, her destiny. But her story was only beginning, and the galaxy would soon learn what happens when humanity decides to give a miracle. The night was quiet in Liara's village. Shadows stretched across the glowing crystal streets, and silence filled the air. But far above, hidden in the endless dark of space, a small human ship drifted into orbit. Inside it was a man who carried secrets that could shake the galaxy. His name was Dr. Elias Kyle, a human scientist. He was not like the other doctors of the stars. The others obeyed the Council's rules. They bowed to the ancient laws. But Elias had the stubborn blood of Earth in his veins. He believed no law was greater than the right to heal. Elias had heard of Liara during a medical gathering on another world. He had listened quietly while alien scholars spoke coldly of the blind girl condemned by law. They treated her story as nothing but an example in a debate. But Elias had felt fire rise in his chest. He thought of his own world, of Earth. There, children had once been condemned too by poverty, by sickness, by rules that said impossible. But humanity had always broken those chains, and Elias had sworn then, "I will not let her remain in darkness." When he landed in Liara's village, the people gathered with uneasy eyes. Humans were rare here, and his tall figure, his sharp features, and his restless energy made them nervous. Liara's parents stepped forward, their voices heavy with both hope and fear. "This is our daughter," they said, leading Elias into a small room where Liara sat. She heard the footsteps, strange and steady. She felt the air shift as someone unfamiliar entered. Her heart beat fast. "Who is here?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with tension. Her father answered, "A human doctor." Elias knelt beside her, his voice calm but filled with something strong. "I am Elias," he said. "I came across the stars because I heard your story." Liara tilted her head, listening carefully. There was something different in his voice. Not pie, not coldness, but a spark of defiance. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you come for me? The council forbids it." Elias did not answer right away. He looked at her closed eyes, at the way her hands trembled slightly in her lap. Finally, he whispered, "Because I believe laws can be wrong." Her parents gasped at his words. They begged him not to speak such things. "The council punishes those who resist," her mother warned. "If they discover you trying to help her, they will destroy you." But Elias only smiled sadly. "I have seen worse threats," he said, "and I have seen humanity rise each time." Liara sat in silence, her heart torn. For 15 years she had known only darkness. She had been told that this was her fate, that even to hope for light was dangerous, and yet, here was a stranger from a reckless species, offering her something no one else dared. "Can you truly help me?" she whispered. Her voice was fragile, as if afraid of breaking under the weight of her own hope. Elias leaned closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Humanity once faced blindness too," he said. "We built eyes of glass and light. We grew new vision with science." He paused, his words heavy with risk. "I carry with me a device. Small, dangerous, forbidden. But if I use it, you may see again." Liara's breath caught. Her world tilted, her chest ached. To see, was it even possible? Or was this just another cruel dream? "Why risk so much?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why me?" Elias's eyes softened. "Because every person deserves the chance to see the stars," he said, "and because your suffering is not fate. It is injustice." For a long time, silence filled the room. Only the hum of distant machines and the soft breath of the night could be heard. Finally, Liara's hands clenched. She turned her face toward him, though her blind eyes saw nothing. "I want to see," she whispered, "even if it costs everything." Elias nodded, his jaw tight with determination. He knew the risks. If the council discovered what he was planning, they would end his life. But in that moment he decided that her hope was worth more than his fear. He stood tall, his voice firm. "Then I will fight the law itself if I must," he said, "but you will see the light." Outside, the stars shone silently, watching, unseen by Liara, but waiting for her. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, the council already felt a shift in the balance. A human had stepped into forbidden ground, and history was about to be written. The days after Elias arrived were heavy with silence. Liara's family avoided speaking too much, afraid their walls might carry whispers to unfriendly ears. But every night, when the village slept, Elias would meet Liara in secret. He would talk to her softly, telling her stories of Earth, of oceans, of mountains, of cities filled with light. She would listen, her heart burning with curiosity. Each story reminded her of what she had never seen, of what the council had stolen from her. One night, Elias placed something small into her hands. It was smooth, light, and warm, as if alive. "What is it?" Liara asked, her fingers exploring the strange shape. "It is a prototype," Elias whispered. "A piece of forbidden technology from humanity's frontier." Liara's lips parted in shock. "Forbidden?" she repeated, her voice shaking. Elias nodded, his eyes scanning the shadows of the room as if the council could hear him even here. "Yes, forbidden," he said. "The council fears technology that changes nature. They claim it will corrupt the galaxy, but in truth they fear losing control." He took the device back from her hands, holding it carefully as though it was both precious and dangerous. "It is called an ocular biolens," Elias explained. "A creation of human science, half machine, half living cell. It can attach to your nerves, grow with your body, and give you sight." He paused, his voice tightening. "But if anyone finds out I used it, both Of us will face punishment worse than death." Layara sat frozen. Her heart raced as if she was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down into an abyss she could not see. For 15 years, she had been told there was no hope, that blindness was her destiny. Now a stranger was offering her light, but at the cost of his life, and maybe hers too. "Why bring it here?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why not leave it safe on your ship?" Elias looked at her with fire in his eyes. "Because miracles mean nothing if they stay hidden in shadows," he said. "A miracle must be given, even if it breaks the rules." Her parents, who had been listening from the doorway, fell to their knees. "Please," her father begged, "do not do this. If the patrols find out, our entire family will suffer." Her mother's voice cracked. "We cannot lose her, but we cannot lose her to the council's rage either." Elias turned to them, his voice calm but unyielding. "You must understand," he said. "Humanity has always faced rules like these, rules that told us what we could not do, where we could not go, what we could not touch. And every time we broke them. Not for greed, not for power, but for the chance to change what was called impossible." Layara's hands trembled as she reached out. Slowly, she touched Elias's sleeve, holding it tightly. "If this is my only chance to see," she whispered, "then I choose it." Elias looked at her with respect. Her voice carried no hesitation now, only courage born from years of pain. He nodded once, then carefully tucked the device back into a small metal case. "Then it is decided," he said. "Tomorrow night, we begin." That night, Layara could not sleep. Her mind spun with questions. What would the world look like? What would stars feel like when seen with her own eyes? What colors would fill her dreams? But with every spark of hope came fear. She knew the coup. Ensel's law was not only words, it was enforced with violence, with patrols that watched the skies. If they discovered what Elias carried, the punishment would fall not only on him, but on her entire village. The next evening, Elias led Layara into a hidden chamber beneath his small ship. The walls glowed faintly with human technology, strange and warm compared to the cold stone of her village. He laid out the tools one by one, tiny needles of light, curved blades that hummed, containers filled with liquid that shimmered like stars. "This is not just medicine," Elias said. "It is rebellion." Layara lay on the table, her heart pounding. Her hands gripped the edge so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Elias stood above her, the device in his hand glowing faintly blue. "Once we begin, there is no turning back," he warned. Layara drew in a shaky breath, then whispered, "I am ready." Outside, the wind howled softly through the crystal trees. The village slept, unaware that history was about to change beneath their feet. Elias bent close, lowering the device toward her face, but just as he prepared to activate it, a piercing sound echoed through the air, the warning bells of the village. Liara's mother burst into the chamber, her face white with terror. "The patrols!" she cried. "The council's patrols are here!" Elias froze, his jaw tightening. The device still hovered inches above Liara's blind eyes. If they were discovered now, everything would be lost. The miracle, the hope, the defiance, everything would die before it began. Liara's breath quickened. Her heart screamed in silence, torn between fear and desperate longing, and Elias, standing at the edge of defiance, whispered to himself, "We are out of time." The night was burning with tension. Outside the village, the sound of patrol ships echoed across the skies, their engines roaring like thunder. Blue lights cut through the clouds as the council's enforcers searched for signs of forbidden work. Inside the small chamber beneath Elias's ship, fear pressed down heavier than air. Layara lay still on the table, her breath fast and shallow, her hands trembled, but she refused to rise. She had waited 15 years in darkness. She would not surrender her chance now. Elias's face was tight with determination, his jaw hard, his hands steady. He leaned close and whispered, "Stay calm. Whatever happens, do not move." Her mother stood near the door, her body shaking with fear. "The patrols are scanning the village," she said, her voice trembling. "If they find us here, they will destroy everything." Her father placed his hand on her shoulder, whispering, We cannot stop this now. If she is to see, it must be tonight. Elias turned on the device. It came alive with a soft hum, glowing with a light that seemed to breathe. Tiny filaments stretched out like threads of silver, alive, searching. Liara flinched at the sound, her blind eyes widening though they saw nothing. "What is it doing?" she asked. "It is preparing to connect," Elias explained, his voice calm but urgent. "It will merge with your nerves, grow into you. It will become part of who you are." The machine's glow reflected in Elias's eyes as he lowered it closer. The blue light kissed Liara's eyelids, and she gasped. For the first time in her life, she felt something behind the darkness, a flicker, a spark, like a whisper of light knocking at the door of her mind. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Is this what seeing feels like?" she whispered. "Not yet," Elias said softly. "But soon." Outside, the sound of patrol boots thundered against the crystal streets. The voices of enforcers shouted orders. "Search every home, every chamber. No human technology is to be hidden here." The sound grew closer, the vibrations shaking the floor above. Liara's mother covered her mouth to stop a cry. Elias kept working, sweat beading on his forehead. "Almost there," he muttered. "Just a few more seconds." The device sank deeper into its work. A fine line of light cut across Liara's closed eyelids, and she gasped. Her heart pounded like a drum as sensations she had never known rushed into her mind. Shapes flickered in the void, colors she could not name. She cried out, I feel the stars." Elias gripped her hand, whispering fiercely, "Hold on, Liara, hold on." The chamber shook as the patrols stormed into the village above. Doors crashed open, voices barked commands. Liara's father leaned close to Elias, his whisper sharp with fear. "They will be here within minutes. We must hide." "No," Elias said firmly, his hands steady over the device. "We finish this now, or all of this was for nothing." Liara bit her lip, her body trembling. The strange sensations grew stronger, flashes of brightness, burning and cold all at once. Her breath came in gasps, but she did not cry out again. She would not break, not now, not when she was so close. Suddenly, a sharp alarm echoed from the ship above them. The patrols were scanning the human vessel. Elias's eyes widened. If they detected the hidden chamber, everything would be lost. He pressed the device harder, the glow brightening. Liara cried out, the flood of new sensations overwhelming. "I see, no, I almost see," she gasped. Her hands reached out blindly, her fingers trembling in the air. Elias whispered urgently, "Hold on, just a little longer, I need more time." But time was slipping away. Above them, heavy boots stomped closer, and the sound of crystal cracking filled the air as the patrols began breaking through walls. They were searching for him, for the device, for the truth. Liara's mother fell to her knees, praying silently to the stars. Her father held a sharp blade, ready to defend his daughter, even if it meant death. Elias ignored the danger, focused only on the light in his hands. The device pulsed once, twice, then sank completely into Liara's eyes. She gasped, her body arching as if struck by lightning. The world inside her shifted, shadows melted, light tore through the walls of her mind. She screamed, and then fell still. Elias's breath caught. He leaned down, whispering, "Liara, can you hear me?" Her lips trembled, her voice faint but filled with awe. I saw something," she whispered. "A spark, a color, just for an instant." Her parents gasped, tears spilling down their faces. Elias's heart soared, but there was no time to celebrate. The chamber door shook violently as fists pounded against it. "Open in the name of the council," voices thundered. Liara clutched Elias's sleeve, her new eyes burning with faint light under her lids. "What happens if they find us?" she whispered. Elias's face hardened, his voice low. "Then we run, or we fight." The door cracked, dust falling from the ceiling. The sound of weapons charging filled the air. Liara's heart pounded as she felt the first flicker of sight deep in her mind. She had tasted light at last, but now it might be stolen before it truly began. And as the door began to shatter, Elias whispered the words that would decide their fate. No matter what happens, Liara, you will see the stars. The chamber shook with violence as the patrols pounded at the door. Dust rained from the ceiling. The metallic frame groaned under the weight of strikes. Inside, Elias stood tall over Liara, the faint glow of the human device still shimmering in her eyes. Her body trembled, her lips parted, and for the first time in her life, something broke the wall of eternal darkness. She gasped sharply. A shimmer, a faint blur, like the glow of fire through smoke, swam into her vision. It was not clear, it was not strong, but it was there. Light. Her heart raced as tears spilled down her face. I see something, she whispered, her voice shaking. I see light. Her parents fell to their knees, their faces pale with shock. Her mother pressed her hand to her mouth to stop a sob. Her father grabbed Elias's arm, whispering, "It worked, it truly worked." But Elias did not smile. His expression was hard, focused. "This is only the beginning," he said. "Her vision will grow, but if we are caught now, it will end before it begins." The door cracked again under the force of the patrols. The glow of weapons leaked through the gaps, blue and deadly. Liara's breath came in fast bursts, her heart pounding. The spark of light inside her mind grew brighter, shapes forming where only void had lived, shadows shifted, outlines bent and twisted. She gasped again, reaching out, her hand trembling toward Elias's silhouette. "I see you," she whispered, sobbing. "Not clearly, but I see you." Elias froze, his chest tight. For 15 years she had known only blackness, and now, because of human defiance, because of forbidden science, she had taken her first step into the world of sight. He placed his hand over hers, firm. "Then remember this moment," he said softly, "because no council, no law, no chain will ever take it from you." The chamber door shattered open. Enforcers stormed in, their armor glow. Beaming, their weapons glowing, they froze when they saw Elias standing over the girl, the forbidden device still humming faintly in the air. One of them shouted, "Human technology! Step away or be destroyed!" Elias raised his hands slowly, his voice steady. "You call this a crime," he said. "But look at her. Look at what you condemned." Liara turned her head toward the soldiers, her eyes still weak but burning faint with new light. For the first time, she saw shapes, blurred figures of armored beings standing in the doorway. Her heart trembled, her throat tightened. "You condemned me to blindness," she whispered, her voice breaking but loud enough to echo. "But now, I can see you." The soldiers hesitated, stunned. Their weapons wavered, their voices unsure. They had come expecting to find hidden machines, not a child with tears streaming from glowing eyes. But their leader barked sharply. "This is treason. The law is the law. Take them all." Elias's fatherly instincts flared, though she was not his child. He stepped in front of Liara, spreading his arms wide. "If you want to silence her," he said firmly, "you will have to silence me first." The patrol leader raised his weapon. The chamber filled with a high-pitched hum. Liara cried out, reaching forward, shapes and colors sharpening in her mind like broken glass forming into windows. Her vision cleared just enough for her to see the glow of weapons, the outline of Elias shielding her, the terror on her mother's face. Her first true sight was of danger, of sacrifice, of defiance. "Stop!" she screamed, her voice ringing with a strength she never knew she had. The soldiers paused, the echo of her cry vibrating in the air. Her glowing eyes locked on them, trembling but fierce. "You call yourselves protectors of law, but all I see is cruelty," she said. "For 15 years you left me in darkness, and tonight a human gives me light. He gave me a miracle you would never allow." Her words struck like thunder. Even the soldiers shifted uneasily, some lowering their weapons, but their leader growled, unmoved. "The law does not change for one girl," he said coldly. "The law is eternal." Elias stepped forward, his eyes burning. "No," he said, his voice firm and fearless. "Laws are only chains when they serve injustice, and humanity was born to break chains." The room held its breath. Liara clutched Elias's sleeve, her faint sight filling with tears. Her parents pressed together, ready to face death if it came, and the patrols stood at the edge of choice. enforce the council's law, or witness the beginning of something greater. The silence was broken by the distant roar of another ship. The sound rumbled across the skies like thunder, closer and closer. The patrol leader snapped his head up, his eyes narrowing. "Reinforcements," he hissed. "We will end this here before more humans come." Elias's jaw tightened. He whispered to Liara, "No matter what happens, you have seen your first light." She held his hand, her voice trembling but firm, "And I will never let it be taken away." The soldiers stepped closer, weapons raised, the chamber filled with the glow of deadly power. Elias stood tall, Liara clung to her first fragile vision, and the night burned with the question, would this miracle live, or would it be destroyed before the galaxy could know? The village was no longer quiet. The patrols dragged Elias, Liara, and her parents through the glowing crystal streets. Neighbors watched in silence, fear in their eyes. No one dared to speak, no one dared to move. The law of the council was older than memory, and to resist it meant destruction. Liara stumbled as she walked, her body weak from the operation, but her eyes glowed faintly with new life. Shapes and shadows swirled before her, blurred but real. She saw the outline of her mother's face for the first time. She saw the stars above, sharp and cold in the night sky. Her heart ached, both with joy and with fear. Our every step brought her closer to judgment. They were taken to the council ship, a massive vessel of silver and black, floating like a shadow above the planet. Inside, the halls were silent and cold. Every wall shimmered with light, but no warmth. It was a place built for law, not for mercy. The council chamber was vast. High thrones circled the center, and in each throne sat a figure of power. Some were alien lords with eyes like fire. Others were machine forms, humming with electric life. Together, they ruled the galaxy with rules written in stone. Together, they decided the fate of worlds. Liara, Elias, and her parents were forced to kneel. The patrol leader raised his voice, echoing across the chamber. "Great Council, we bring before you a human doctor who has broken the highest law." He pointed at Liara, his voice sharp. "He used forbidden technology to give sight to one who was condemned to blindness." The chamber erupted in whispers, some gasped in outrage, others in disbelief. But the council leader, a towering being of silver skin and glowing eyes, raised his hand. Silence fell instantly. His voice was cold, deep, and merciless. "Human," he said, staring at Elias. "You have broken the sacred law of the galaxy. You have interfered where you had no right. What is your defense?" Elias rose slowly to his feet. His chains clinked, but his voice was clear and steady. "My defense is simple," he said. "Your law is unjust." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Liara's parents bowed their heads, trembling in fear, but Elias did not stop. "For 15 years you left this girl in darkness," he said, pointing to Liara. "Not because you could not help her, but because you chose not to. You call it law, but I call it cruelty." The council leader's eyes narrowed. "You dare speak against us," he thundered. "You dare stand against the eternal order." "Yes," Elias said, and his voice rising. "Because humanity was born to stand against chains, we have broken every wall that told us what we could not do. We have crossed oceans, climbed stars, and now we bring miracles you would deny." He turned to Liara, his eyes softening. "And now, because of us, she can see." Liara felt every gaze fall upon her. Her body trembled. But she stood, her new eyes flickered with faint light, blurred but determined. She looked at the council for the first time. "I was condemned before I was even old enough to choose," she said, her voice shaking but growing stronger. "You told me blindness was my destiny, but it was only your law." The chamber fell silent. Her words carried more power than anyone expected. "I lived in darkness," she continued, tears on her cheeks. "But the humans gave me light. They gave me hope. Something your council never gave." She lifted her face, her voice firm now. "So tell me, who is guilty here? The one who gave me vision, or the ones who stole it for 15 years? A ripple spread across the chamber. Some council members shifted uncomfortably, their eyes lowering. Others growled in anger, their pride wounded. The leader's voice thundered again, shaking the air. Enough. The law is eternal, and both of you must face punishment. But before the sentence could be spoken, another council member rose, a tall figure cloaked in blue light, their voice calm but sharp. Perhaps the law is eternal, they said, but justice is not eternal unless it changes with the galaxy. Whispers filled the chamber again. The council was divided. Elias stood straight, his eyes fierce. Look at her, he said, pointing to Liara. You can kill me. You can silence humanity, but you cannot erase what has already happened. Her eyes are living proof that your laws are wrong. The leader's face darkened with fury. He raised his hand to strike judgment, but Liara stepped forward, her small voice carrying more strength than anyone expected. If you punish him, she said, then punish me too, because I asked for the miracle. I chose. See it. I wanted to see. Her parents gasped, tears streaming down their faces. The chamber shook with the weight of her defiance. She raised her glowing eyes, facing the most powerful beings in the galaxy. You can chain one man, but you cannot chain the truth, she said. Humanity gave me light, and no punishment will blind me again. The council sat in silence, divided between fear, anger, and doubt. The leader's hand trembled, his glowing eyes burning with rage. The chamber was no longer under his full control. The people, the guards, even some council members looked not at him, but at Liara and Elias. The trial had become more than judgment. It had become a battle between law and truth, between chains and freedom, and the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. The chamber of the council burned with tension. The leaders of the galaxy sat divided, their voices caught between anger and doubt. At the center stood Liara, her glowing eyes trembling but unbroken. Beside her was Elias, his chains heavy but his spirit fierce. They had already changed something, even if the council refused to admit it. The council leader rose from his throne. His silver body glimmered, his voice thundered like a storm. The law cannot be broken. The human must be punished, he declared. But his words no longer carried the same weight. For the first time, whispers of resistance stirred inside the chamber. One council member spoke, their voice steady. Perhaps the law is eternal, but the galaxy is not. This girl's eyes prove that change cannot be denied forever. Another added, if we condemn them, we condemn hope itself. The arguments rippled like waves, splitting the council further apart. Liara's parents knelt at the floor, weeping silently. They had feared this moment, but they also felt pride. Their daughter, once a helpless blind child, now stood with a voice that shook the pillars of power. Elias leaned toward her, whispering, hold strong, Liara. Your courage is greater than any law. Liara raised her chin, her faint new sight letting her see more than just shadows now. She saw faces, outlines, the gleam of armor, the shimmer of eyes. The world was still blurred, but to her it was brighter than 1,000 suns. She spoke again, her voice trembling but clear. For 15 years I lived in darkness because of your law, she said. But one human defied you and gave me light, and now you want to call him guilty. She lifted her glowing eyes toward the council. Then call me guilty too, because I chose to see. The chamber fell silent. Her words struck harder than weapons. The guards lowered their rifles slightly, their eyes shifting with dew. But some council members looked away, their pride cracking under her truth. Elias stepped forward despite his chains. You can kill me, he said firmly, but humanity will not stop. We will keep breaking your chains, keep giving miracles where you forbid them, because that is who we are. His voice carried fire, the kind that had carried humans across oceans, through wars into the stars, and for the first time, the council felt fear, not of weapons, but of defiance that could not be erased. The leader slammed his fist, his voice shaking with rage. This is rebellion. This is heresy. The human must die. But before his words could echo, Liara cried out, no, she shouted, her eyes blazing. This is not rebellion. This is life. This is hope. She lifted her arms, turning to the chamber. Look at me, she begged. 15 years you left me blind, but now I see you. I see the stars. I see the galaxy you tried to hide from me, and I will never close my eyes again." Her words spread beyond the chamber, carried through the voices of the witnesses, the guards, the whispers of the people. Already the story was moving faster than law could stop. A blind girl had been given sight by a human, and no punishment could erase that truth. The council leader realized, too late, even if he destroyed Elias, even if he blinded Liara again, the miracle had already been seen. The galaxy would remember, the galaxy would whisper, and whispers could grow into storms. Finally, the council split their judgment. Some demanded death, others demanded mercy, but no decision brought silence. The chamber was broken, its unity shattered, and that alone was victory. Elias turned to Liara, his eyes soft. "You changed them," he whispered. "Even if they do not admit it, you planted a seed." Liara gripped his hand, her vision clearing a little more with every heartbeat. "No," she said softly. "We changed them." The council ended the trial without resolution. They released Liara to her family but ordered Elias to remain under watch, but the truth had already escaped their control. On distant worlds, whispers grew into shouts. Alien children who suffered under cruel laws asked, "If the humans could give sight to her, what miracle could they give to us?" And slowly, the galaxy began to question. In her village, Liara stepped outside under the pale rings of her world. For the first time in her life, she lifted her face to the stars and saw them with her own eyes, blurry, faint, but real. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Her father held her tightly. Her mother sobbed in her arms. Elias stood behind her, his face tired but smiling. "You see them now," he whispered. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with joy. "I see the stars." The galaxy had wanted her to remain blind, but humanity had given her a miracle. And now, her glowing eyes became a symbol, not just for her people, but for every world where law had chained hope. Her story spread, her courage spread, and though the council tried to silence it, the stars themselves carried her name. For 15 years, Liara had lived in darkness, but humanity gave her light, and no law in the galaxy could ever take the stars away again.